William Thompson III mockingly declared he would marry his son to a black woman if she could dance a waltz, pointing his champagne glass at Kesha Williams, 35, a contract cleaner who had just dropped a crystal tray, causing a loud shattering sound that silenced 200 elite guests at a Thompson Holdings event. Jonathan Thompson, 28, whispered his father was being ridiculous, embarrassed by the cruel joke, but William, clearly intoxicated by power and whiskey, ignored him. He insisted on testing her coordination, walking to the center of the room. As Kesha knelt, picking up glass shards with trembling hands, her eyes held a calm determination. When the event manager tried to intervene, William cut him off, dramatically demanding a waltz be played. He repeated his challenge, imagining the heir to the Thompson fortune marrying a cleaning lady, which elicited collective cruel laughter from the guests. Kesha finally stood, wiped her hands, and declared, "I accept," in a clear voice that silenced the room. Even the orchestra paused, confused by her unexpected response. William, momentarily shaken, asked her to repeat herself. Kesha reiterated her acceptance, adding that he must keep his word, even if made in jest, with a subtle smile that unnerved some guests. While others laughed louder, believing it would be a major embarrassment, no one noticed the familiar gleam in Kesha's eyes, reminiscent of her past as a mesmerizing performer on prestigious stages, before a single tragic night altered her life's course. The narrative hinted at subscribing to the channel for more of this story of prejudice and unexpected turns. William's 50-year-old wife, Victoria Thompson, known for teaching ballroom dancing to Manhattan's elite, approached with a venomous smile, dismissing the idea of competing with this. William encouraged Victoria, reminding her of her club waltz trophy, deemed sufficient for the demonstration. Kesha watched silently, her mind flashing back 15 years to when she was Kesha Marorrow, principal dancer with the American National Ballet, recalling standing ovations and critics comparing her to history's greatest ballerinas. This ended abruptly with a car accident after a special performance, leading to a 3-month coma and the harsh reality that her legs would never be the same, making professional dance impossible. William instructed Jonathan to get his camera to record the cleaning lady trying to pass herself off as a dancer. Jonathan hesitated, uncomfortable, stating the girl was just doing her job, but William sarcastically cut him off, reminding him that she accepted the challenge and was now there to entertain. He then blackmailed Jonathan by threatening to reveal an embarrassing situation to his girlfriend. Kesha understood this was another example of William's toxic control. William ordered the DJ to play music and for guests to place bets. $500 for his wife, $1,000 for the employee, which was met with cruel laughter as some guests began betting, treating it as free entertainment. Victoria theatrically stretched on the dance floor. William approached Kesha with a wicked smile, demanding she get on her knees, apologize for wasting everyone's time, and then be fired after she loses. At that moment, Kesha's eyes showed a profound change. The determination that fueled her international dance career, her fight through physical therapy to walk again, and her dignity despite losing everything she had worked for. She calmly told Mr. Thompson that when she won, he must keep his word about the marriage, and she also wanted him to publicly admit, before all guests, that he had wrongly judged a woman based on her skin color and profession, demanding a public apology. The room grew tense. Some guests whispered, recognizing the situation's unexpected gravity. William laughed loudly, acknowledging her guts and accepting her terms, but warned her that if she made a fool of herself, she would lose her job and dignity. William Thompson III was unaware he was about to face a woman who had once lost everything and understood the struggle for respect in a rejecting society. While Victoria prepared with basic ballroom moves, Kesha stood motionless, her mind working like a precise machine. Her 15 years of brutal physical therapy and learning to walk again had forged a resilience that the spoiled rich attendees could not comprehend. A guest whispered, commenting on Kesha's likely inexperience and the unnecessary humiliation. William circled, collecting bets, exacerbating the humiliation by announcing $500 bets that she wouldn't finish the song without tripping and $1,000 bets that she would run out. Laughter filled the room, but Kesha noticed Jonathan wasn't laughing. He seemed increasingly uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. She then recognized something familiar about Jonathan's face. It wasn't their first encounter. 3 weeks prior, when Kesha started working Thompson Holdings events, she had observed a young man who treated contract workers respectfully, unlike other executives. It was him. A low voice from a black man in his 60s, Marcus, the head of security for 20 years, approached Kesha discreetly, pretending to check his radio. He murmured that he had seen her dance 15 years ago at the National Theatre as Kesha Marorrow, principal soloist, as he was security there too. Kesha's heart raced, realizing someone recognized her after years of anonymity. Marcus continued, expressing shock, having thought she died in the accident, and that newspapers claimed she would never dance again. Kesha replied that not all newspaper reports were true, maintaining a steady voice. Marcus nodded slowly, stating what was done to her then, and what was happening now, was an injustice, glancing at William, who was still laughing. At that moment, Kesha made a 15-year deferred decision about her identity. She asked Marcus for a favor, to record everything after her dance, especially reactions, no matter what. Marcus, confused, agreed. Kesha smiled for the first time that night, explaining that some people need to be reminded that underestimating someone based on appearance can be the most expensive mistake of their lives. Meanwhile, William escalated the spectacle, shouting that if she finished the song without falling, he'd give her $1,000, but if she failed, she would clean the entire room on her knees. The crowd reacted with mixed laughter and uncomfortable murmurs. Some guests began to realize that William Thompson III had crossed a line, but no one dared to confront him. Jonathan again attempted to intervene, saying it had gone too far, but William snapped at him, calling him too soft, and asserting a natural hierarchy where people like Kesha needed to know their place. At this moment, Kesha began to stretch with subtle, almost imperceptible movements, which Marcus immediately recognized as her preparatory exercises from the National Theatre. Marcus muttered, "My God, she's really going to do this." Victoria Thompson, noticing the attention shifting to Kesha, ordered the DJ to start the music to get the charade over with. The DJ, clearly uncomfortable, played a classical waltz. Victoria danced alone, executing competent but predictable ballroom moves learned at elite clubs. Despite her amateur technique by professional standards, she received polite applause, as she represented their ideal of a wealthy, educated white woman in high social circles. William applauded exaggeratedly, then introduced our guest artist. Kesha walked slowly to the center, each step measured and dignified, unsettling some guests who expected a defeated demeanor. The DJ, out of politeness, asked her song preference. Kesha simply replied, "The same one. But from the beginning." William laughed, seeing it as her wanting a second chance. He ordered the song played, anticipating her quick failure. What they didn't know was that Kesha had strategically chosen that waltz, a piece she knew by heart, having danced it hundreds of times throughout her career. More significantly, it was one of her final performances before the accident, a night at the National Theatre where she received a 5-minute standing ovation for a transcendent, emotionally devastating performance, described by critics as one of the greatest in American dance history. As she awaited the music, Kesha closed her eyes, transported back to that night 15 years ago. She relived the sensation of soaring across the stage, her profound connection to each musical note, and the absolute certainty of her calling. Doctors had declared her career over, and she herself had believed it for years, until she painstakingly rebuilt her muscles and her relationship with dance in secret, never returning to the stage professionally, but dancing alone during her darkest moments. The music began, signaling an extraordinary event in that prejudiced hall. Under the weight of condescending glances, her hands positioned themselves with a precision that made some musicians frown, instinctively recognizing a professional was at work. They could not have imagined that these first bars would herald the rebirth of a lost legend and permanently shift the power dynamics of the room. The waltz's opening notes echoed, and Kesha began to move. Her steps were not hesitant, but posed with an instant grace that seemed to defy gravity. Her initial movements were subtle, almost shy, keeping expectations low. However, as the music intensified, something extraordinary unfolded. Each step became more fluid, each turn more precise, each movement imbued with a deep emotion that began to captivate everyone present. William Thompson stopped laughing. Victoria's smile vanished. The entire room started to grasp that they weren't witnessing a cleaning lady trying to dance. They were observing an artist reclaiming her rightful place in the world. Someone in the audience murmured, "My God, she's exceptional." Kesha executed a series of pirouettes, challenging for any professional ballerina, followed by a grand jeté that lifted her effortlessly, defying physics. These were not mere ballroom steps. This was classical ballet of the highest caliber, masterfully adapted to the waltz. Marcus, honoring his promise, had discreetly positioned his cell phone to record not only the performance but also the audience's reactions, especially William Thompson's, whose face morphed from scorn to confusion, then to something akin to terror. "This is impossible," William whispered, his voice cracking. "Who the hell is this woman?" The truth began to dawn on some attendees like a flash of lightning when Kesha performed the final sequence of her old National Theatre performance, a combination of her unique, self-created classical techniques that had become her trademark. "Wait a minute," exclaimed a patron of the arts, who frequented all major city events. "I know those moves. I've seen that sequence before. But where?" Jonathan Thompson, completely mesmerized, captured every second with his camera, recognizing genius regardless of its source. As the music reached its crescendo, Kesha performed a series of futees, continuous turns on one leg, leaving the entire audience speechless. These movements demanded not only perfect technique but years of training and extraordinary physical strength. The music concluded, and Kesha finished in a pose that was both powerful and vulnerable. A profound silence ensued, lasting an eternity, the kind that follows an audience witnessing something far beyond their wildest expectations. Then, slowly, one person began to applaud, followed by another, until within seconds, the entire hall rose to its feet, applauding with an intensity that rattled the windows. Shouts of "Bravo!" and "Extraordinary!" echoed. William Thompson stood pale, realizing he had been utterly humiliated by someone he considered inferior, and worse, in front of Manhattan's elite, who now looked at him with a mix of awe and embarrassment. At that moment, Marcus approached Kesha, still recording. He announced loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Kesha Marorrow, former principal soloist with the American National Ballet." The name resonated like a bomb. Gasps and exclamations of shock filled the hall. Kesha Marorrow was a legend, a ballerina who had mysteriously disappeared after a tragic accident at the peak of her career. "Impossible," Victoria Thompson stammered. "Kesha Marorrow is dead. Or at least she never danced again after the accident." "Clearly," Kesha interjected, finally breaking her silence, "the rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated." The crowd laughed, but William Thompson found no humor in it. The reality of what had transpired hit him like a freight train. He had publicly humiliated one of American history's greatest entertainers, and it was all on tape. Marcus, still holding his cell phone, reminded Mr. Thompson that he had promised to marry his son to her if she danced better than his wife, and that the audience could attest to the condition being met. Jonathan, understanding the direction of the situation, approached Kesha. "Miss Marorrow," he said, "I would like to publicly apologize for my father's inexcusable behavior." "Jonathan, shut up," William exploded, losing all composure. "You will not apologize to anyone, especially not to her." At that moment, Kesha unveiled the full extent of her strategy. She calmly stated, "Mr. Thompson, I believe we have a marriage proposal to discuss. Surely a man of your standing keeps his word, doesn't he?" The audience fell silent, recognizing they were witnessing something far more significant than a mere display of talent. William, his arrogance replaced by desperation, growled, "You must be crazy if you think I'm going to honor a drunken joke." "Ah, but it wasn't a joke," Kesha countered with a smile. She then asked Marcus to play the recording of Mr. Thompson's statements from that night. Marcus held his phone high, playing the clear recording of William making the bet, doubling the conditions, increasing the humiliations, and publicly declaring he would marry his son to her if she won. The recording continued with William confirming the terms even after Kesha had specified he would have to keep his word. The audience murmured, some nervous laughter, others clearly embarrassed by William's self-inflicted predicament. William, completely losing composure, shouted, "That's blackmail." "No," Kesha calmly corrected. "This is accountability. You made a public bet with clear terms in front of 200 witnesses. Now you have to decide if you are a man of your word or if your reputation is worth less than your prejudice." Jonathan moved closer to Kesha. "Miss Marorrow," he said, "if you will allow me, I would like to honor my father's word. Not because I am forced to, but because any man would be honored to marry someone of your talent and dignity." The audience murmured, surprised by the unexpected romantic turn. William was visibly shaking with rage. "Jonathan, if you do this, you're out of the company, out of the family, out of everything." "Then so be it," Jonathan replied, extending his hand to Kesha. "Some things are more important than money, Dad. Like having integrity." Kesha looked at Jonathan's outstretched hand, then at the audience, then at William Thompson, who appeared to be having a public nervous breakdown. Kesha addressed Mr. Thompson, stating that 15 years ago, people like him devalued her after she became imperfect, and today, he tried to humiliate her based on her skin color and her work. She declared that true nobility comes not from inheritance or wealth, but from how one treats other human beings when no one is watching. She noted that Jonathan had learned this lesson despite his father's efforts. Regarding the proposal, she smiled and accepted dinner with Jonathan, but clarified that marriage is a decision made by two people based on love and respect, not humiliating bets. The audience erupted in applause again, this time for Kesha's dignity and wisdom. William Thompson, realizing he had lost the bet and the respect of everyone, including his son, muttered about lawyers and left the hall, followed by a mortified Victoria. Marcus stopped recording, noting the social media impact would be very interesting. As Manhattan's elite processed the lesson in prejudice, humility, and true class, the question lingered. How would William Thompson, a man who built his empire on reputation, cope with his arrogance and prejudice being publicly and humiliatingly exposed and spreading far beyond that ballroom? Marcus's recording rapidly spread across social media. Within 24 hours, "Millionaire Humiliates Legendary Ballerina" became a global trending topic with millions of views and indignant comments. William Thompson woke to find his company had lost $3 million in contracts overnight, his partners demanding an emergency meeting, and his wife, Victoria, locked in her bedroom, refusing to appear publicly. Jonathan confronted his father in his office, informing him that the board had voted for his resignation within the hour, or he would be forcibly removed. William accused Jonathan of betrayal, but Jonathan calmly stated William betrayed himself the moment his arrogance outweighed his humanity. Meanwhile, Kesha was inundated with offers. 3 international ballet companies wanted her to choreograph special performances, Lincoln Center offered a solo event, and Hollywood producers were interested in her story. The most touching offer came from the children at her former community school, who had pooled $23 to offer her a scholarship to return to teaching. Kesha, tearfully, accepted on the condition that they make it into something bigger. 6 months later, the Kesha Marorrow Center for the Arts opened in Manhattan, funded by global donations that poured in after her story went viral. Jonathan Thompson, now leading a revamped, socially responsible family business, was the first major donor. William Thompson, conversely, lost everything: his company, reputation, and family. Victoria had filed for divorce and moved to Europe. He was last seen working as a low-level consultant, a shadow of his arrogant former self. During the center's opening, Marcus, observing Kesha teaching diverse, smiling children, remarked that it was not just a victory over prejudice, but a lesson in how true nobility responds to cruelty. Kesha, now recognized again as a great artist, smiled as she watched her new students, saying, "Sometimes, we have to lose everything to discover who we really are." Kesha added that sometimes people must lose everything to learn who they should never have tried to be. Jonathan approached, carrying flowers from the garden he had planted himself around the center, and asked if she was ready for dinner. Kesha replied, "Ready?" accepting his arm and the new life she had built from the ashes of her old one. Kesha's true revenge was not destroying William Thompson, but building something so beautiful and inspiring that his cruelty seemed insignificant in comparison. She demonstrated that facing prejudice with dignity and responding to hatred with excellence not only brings victory but transforms the world. The narrative concluded by asking if viewers had faced similar prejudice and encouraged them to share their stories and subscribe for more tales proving that being extraordinary is the best response to underestimation.